Do not fall behind on Bitcoin. Knowledge is power. And if you ignore it, you can miss one of the biggest financial shifts since the gold standard. Look, I'm not here to tell you Bitcoin will hit $1 million tomorrow, or that you need to dump your entire portfolio into crypto. But here's what I'm saying. As a financial planner, I've watched too many smart people dismiss Bitcoin without really understanding what it actually is. And that's a mistake. My goal today, it's simple. To get you up to speed on Bitcoin fast, using insights from the book, The Bitcoin Standard. I'll cover where money came from, why today's current fiat system struggles, and most importantly, why Bitcoin might be the most important form of money humanity has ever seen. This isn't hype. This is going to be education. So let's dive in. I call this chapter 1, the history of money and how we got here. Before we talk about Bitcoin, we need to understand money itself. And trust me, this context matters. Money didn't start as government issued paper. It evolved over time. Think of money like electricity. It's something we use every single day, but rarely do you stop to question, how does it work? Or where did it even come from? So with money, thousands of years ago, humans used to barter. You had grain, I had cattle. Maybe we make a deal. But bartering was clunky. It required what economists called double coincidence of wants. You needed what I had, and I needed what you had at the exact same time. And that's inefficient. So society moved on to commodity monies, things like seashells, huge rhinestones, and even livestock. But these had problems too. Seashells are brittle, i.e. they aren't durable. Livestock is big, i.e. it isn't portable. Over time, the market eventually evolved and moved on to things like gold and silver because they were scarce, durable, and recognizable. And then the Romans came along and they continued to refine this with the standardization of coins. And for centuries, gold became the foundation of sound money. Then came the gold standard. In the late 1800s, currency were backed by actual gold reserves. Say if you had a dollar bill, you could exchange it for a fixed amount of gold. This created global trust and stability. It was like building on a rock. But after World War I, governments needed flexibility. They spent more of these on war than they had in gold reserves. So they abandoned the gold standard and moved to the fiat money system. And fiat means by decree. So the government says, hey, this piece of paper has value, and we will all agree to believe it. So now let's get to chapter 2. What makes money sound? So here's the $1 million question. What makes money good, i.e. sound? Not all money is created equal. For something to work as money, it has to check a few boxes. And the book breaks this down beautifully. Money has to be a medium of exchange, a unit of count, and a store of value. I think of analogy like, think of sound money like a measuring tape. You hire a contractor to remodel your home, and they need a measuring tape they can trust before cutting expensive materials. They would never say, measure a board with a rubber band that's stretching and flexing before they make their cut. They need to trust it today, tomorrow, and 10 years from now, just like money. So what are the characteristics of sound money that make it like that measuring tape? There are 6 big ones. First is that it needs to be durable. It has to be portable. It has to be divisible. It has to be fungible. It has to be scarce. And it has to be recognizable. Well, gold nailed 5 out of those 6. It's first, it's scarce. Mining is hard and expensive. It's second, it's durable. Gold from ancient Egypt still exists today. 3, it's fungible. 1 ounce of gold here equals 1 ounce of gold there. 4, it's recognizable. You can test it chemically to ensure it truly is gold. And 5, it's divisible. You can melt a bar and create a lot of little coins. The only downside, portability. Moving $1 million in gold is heavy, it's risky, and it's slow. And if you fail at any one of those characteristics, money loses trust. In the end, it isn't about convenience or even popularity, but enduring trust. That's why seashells didn't last. That's why gold struggled, as it missed out on truly being sound money. So that leads us to chapter 3, problem with today's fiat system. So why does our current system struggle? It's because fiat money violates the rules of sound money. Governments can print it whenever they want. And guess what? They do often. The result of this printing is inflation. And inflation is the hidden tax on your savings. And here's how it works. Let's say you earned $100,000 in 2000 and you stuffed it under your mattress. You're happy. You call yourself a great saver. But guess what? That same $100,000 today buys you about $67,000 worth of goods. Now, your dollars didn't disappear. You can lift up that mattress and there's still $100,000 under there. It just lost purchasing power. That's inflation, and it's by design. Fiat money encourages consumption over savings. If your money's losing value every single year, why save it? You might as well spend it. But guess what? Sound money? It does the exact opposite. It rewards patience. It makes you think long term. That's why the gold standard era saw massive infrastructure projects and a lot of long term thinking. People save because their money held value. Now let's circle back and let's look at some extreme cases. In Venezuela, Zimbabwe, and Argentina, these countries experienced hyperinflation. That means prices were doubling every few days. In Weimar, Germany in the 1920s, people literally used wheelbarrows of cash to buy a single loaf of bread. And this isn't ancient history. This happens when governments lose control of their printing press. Even here in the US, the dollar has lost over 95% of its purchasing power since the Federal Reserve was created, and that was in 1913. Slow and steady debasement. It's like ice melting in the sun. Ice is solid at first, then it slowly disappears. And sometimes it happens instantly. And this leads us to Bitcoin. So let's first start with the basics. All right, so if fiat fails, what's the alternative? Enter Bitcoin. But before you can appreciate Bitcoin, you need to understand how it works. And don't worry, I'm going to keep this simple. Bitcoin rests on 4 pillars: blockchain, mining, proof of work, and halving. Together, they create a decentralized system that no single person or government controls. Let me use an analogy. So imagine you have a classroom. The blockchain is the grade book where all grades are recorded for everyone to see. Mining is the actual students solving complicated math problems. The proof of work is the teacher going around and checking the answers. Well, the winner of the math competition, i.e. that student, gets a gold star, which is the Bitcoin. Now let's dive in a little bit further. The blockchain is a public ledger. Every Bitcoin transaction ever made gets recorded on that blockchain. And once something is written, it is sealed into a block and put onto that blockchain. Now, to rewrite history, a hacker would need to redo all the math for every block that was created, and it would have to outpace the entire network, doing it in real time as blocks are continuously added every 10 minutes to that chain. The cost would be astronomical. That's why Bitcoin's history is effectively permanent. Now, who maintains this ledger, i.e. the blockchain? Well, there's thousands of computers around the world called nodes. Nodes are like little referees. They're like little referees. They check every little transaction to ensure it follows the rules. The kicker is they don't get paid. They do it to protect their own money and the overall network. It's truly self-serving and powerful. With tens of thousands of little referees worldwide, cheating the system becomes nearly impossible. So next, I want to talk about how mining and the proof of work secures Bitcoin. Truly, mining is where things start to get interesting. Mining can be like a lottery. Miners buy little tickets with computing power. Now, they all put it in, and one miner wins every 10 minutes. And when they win, they earn a Bitcoin plus transaction fees. The other miners who bought tickets with computing power, they don't win money, but their work still makes cheating harder for the network. And when a block is proposed by the winner and all the nodes sign off, it is put on the blockchain, and that coordination keeps Bitcoin fair and secure. Now, critics say Bitcoin mining wastes energy. And yes, Bitcoin consumes about 120 to 170 terawatt hours annually. That's a lot. That's roughly 0.5% of the global energy consumption. Now, that sounds like a lot, and it is, but consider this. Bitcoin secures a net worth over $1 trillion. It's one of the most energy efficient security systems ever created when you measure the value it's protecting. Plus, Bitcoin mining increasingly uses renewable energy. Miners chase cheap electricity, which often comes from hydro, wind, or solar. In fact, Bitcoin mining can stabilize energy grids by consuming excess power during those low demand periods. So now we know about mining, but proof of work is Bitcoin's secret weapon. It transforms electricity into cryptographic proof. To attack Bitcoin, you need to control more than 50% of the network computing power around the globe. That's an investment in hardware and electricity that would far exceed any potential gains. It's simply economically irrational. So this leads us to scarcity, which is halving. Here's where Bitcoin gets absolutely brilliant. Every 4 years, Bitcoin's faucet tightens. This is called halving. So rewards to miners. So remember, every 10 minutes, a block is created and a miner wins the right to post it by solving a hard math problem to the blockchain. In 2009, at its inception, 50 coins were rewarded per block. 4 years later, it was halved, so the same process resulted in 25 coins. It continues to halve, and today, it's 3.125 Bitcoins per block. The halving doesn't stop, and by 2140, new coins stop entirely. But Bitcoin doesn't die. Miners earn transaction fees, and scarcity makes what's already out there even more valuable. Think of it like gold. It's rare, it's enduring, and it's never zero. But the key is only 21 million Bitcoin will ever exist. No central bank can change it. Scarcity is forced by math. This is like fundamentally different from fiat money. The US dollar supply has increased by trillions in the past decade. And Bitcoin's supply, well, it's fixed. It's predictable, transparent, and you can verify it yourself on the blockchain. The stock to flow ratio measures the relationship between existing supply, i.e. the stock, and the annual production called the flow. Well, gold's ratio, about 62. Bitcoin already exceeds that. It'll keep rising with each halving. Mathematically, Bitcoin is the hardest money humanity has ever created. So next, I want to go a little bit further on Bitcoin versus gold. So how does Bitcoin actually compare to gold? We know that gold is scarce, but it's hard to move and a little bit challenging to verify. You need vaults, security, and trusted third parties. But Bitcoin is also scarce, but it's digital, verifiable, and borderless. And once it's recorded on that blockchain, it can't be faked or changed. That's why it's called digital gold. Gold, it has preserved wealth for millennia. An ounce of gold in Roman times bought a nice toga. And today, it buys a nice suit. That is remarkably consistent. But the Bitcoin, it has outperformed gold dramatically since its inception, going from essentially zero in 2009 to over 120,000 in 2025. Now, past performance does not guarantee future results, but Bitcoin's scarcity advantage is simply undeniable. Gold requires trust. You trust the vault. You trust the purity test. Bitcoin requires math. You hold private keys. You own your Bitcoin. There are no intermediaries, no counterpart. That's sovereignty. Gold's market cap, 13 to 14 trillion. Bitcoin's 2.4 trillion. If Bitcoin captures even a fraction of gold's market, the price implications are significant. This isn't a prediction, it's math. Which leads me to the next point, the network effect and why Bitcoin grows. Here's the final piece of the puzzle. Bitcoin is like a social network. It truly is useless with 10 people. However, it's indispensable with millions. Every new adopter increases the value of the whole system. And unlike a network like Facebook, there are only 21 million shares to go around. The network effect has been able to explain why Bitcoin has continued to grow with regulatory uncertainty and technical complexity. It's because each merchant that accepts Bitcoin, each exchange that lists it, and each institution that holds it makes it more useful, liquid, and legitimate. We're seeing this in real time. The US Bitcoin ETFs hold over 1.5 million Bitcoin, which is roughly $188 billion. That's 2% of Bitcoin's total supply. BlackRock's ETF, nearly $100 billion in assets. And then think bigger than the United States. Global adoption is rising too. 560 million plus people worldwide now use crypto. Countries like El Salvador adopted Bitcoin as its legal tender. The US established a strategic Bitcoin reserve in 2025. And even the SEC is launching a digital asset innovation hub. This isn't fringe anymore. It's mainstream. So here's my final thought. It's easy to dismiss Bitcoin, but the same was true for the internet in the 1990s. The people who studied it early were ready when it took off. So do not dismiss Bitcoin. Research it, think critically about it, and try to understand it. If you're a tech professional sitting on equity comp and just wondering how Bitcoin fits into your financial plan, let's talk. And if you want to keep learning, subscribe below to my channel. I'll keep breaking down money, equity comp, market dynamics, and Bitcoin so you can stay ahead.